Zhao Berg says, I've been dealing with PFF for years now. What causes the condition and what are some approaches for potentially solving it? Thank you.
What's PFF?
Post-Finasteride syndrome.
Oh, oh, that's opening a whole can of worms. I mean, what's causing it? Finasteride is causing it, but there are multiple aspects to it. There's a metabolic aspect. There's an actual physical slash structural damage to the some of the nerves. There's also a hormonal imbalance that finasteride causes. Ray seems to think that the gastrointestinal tract is also involved. And I happen to agree because I think finasteride, basically the androgens are very intimately involved in the motility of the gastrointestinal tract.
Oh,
And
really?
a few recent animal trials, animal studies, which I sent you, show that the animal models with Alzheimer's, the mice and the rats have really degenerate gastrointestinal tracts, and that they gave these mice and rats dihydrotestosterone, the strong androgen, and it fixed the GI symptoms and recovered partially the cognitive ability of the mice and the rats. So there's something going on in the gastrointestinal tract as well when androgens are low, and that's what finasteride does. I mean, basically, yes, it elevates your testosterone at the expense of dihydrotestosterone, but it looks like it's DHT that's really keeping your gastrointestinal tract healthy, and that's corroborated by another study which demonstrated that in very old animals, if you give them an aromatase inhibitor, their gastrointestinal motility recovers back to youthful levels. And many people can probably older people can relate to this because their their motility slows down. They're having like bowel movements once every few days instead of every day, and that seems to be due to low androgen slash high estrogen, at least in the males, and in the females it's probably the high estrogen low progesterone environment. So I mean, like I said, it's a multi-pronged, multifactorial bag of reasons. But ultimately, I think addressing the metabolic aspect by supplementing thyroid, because finasteride has been shown to affect the thyroid directly, would be a very important aspect. And also, in cases where this doesn't help enough, I think supplementation with progesterone and an androgen may be necessary because the the nerve damage that was noticed as a result of finasteride was of a demyelinating type, and progesterone and pregnenolone are the two steroids mainly responsible for myelination. So that supplementation with those may be needed to restore the sheath of the nerve. And then if there are persistent cognitive and sexual side effects, usually supplementation with some kind of an androgen is necessary. I don't know if there's an easy solution, but so far the people that I know that have improved have used at least one of these approaches. And it's just a matter of I don't know if you're working with a doctor or not, but doctors may be on board about supplementing with the DHT, and that's probably the hardest part because it's DHT is hard to find, and it's unless you get it through a doctor, you have to find online sources. But once that's taken care of, then pregnenolone, progesterone, thyroid, they're relatively more easier. You can obtain them more easily than the androgens.
Yeah, I get my only thought would be treating it like really, really bad hypothyroidism.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
with structural damage,
yeah.
which probably severe hypothyroidism can cause as well. But this one was demonstrated specifically on the nerve that was responsible for ejaculation and erection. There was a spinal nerve. I'm blanking on its name, but the study is posted on the forum. So if you search for it, you'll find it.
Thank you for that, Georgie. Thank you, Zhao Berg. Another one from Kirk. He says Ray has said that the balding scalp grows shows high cortisol and PTH rather than T sensitivity. If one made life and diet changes to address this, how long would it take to significantly lower cortisol?
I don't know if I'm one of these patients, and my hair regrows almost completely in the summer, and I actually measure my hormones, and I was actually a textbook Ray textbook subject because when I lost my hair really quickly in my mid 20 in my sorry my mid 30s, and basically when I did the test with my doctor, my prolactin was 50, and my cortisol, I think the morning cortisol, the upper limit of normal is like 21, and I was at 42. So basically, that span of 6 months when I lost most of my hair, my prolactin and cortisol were through the roof, and I didn't measure PTH, but my vitamin D, I was actually in the insufficiency zone. So you have deficiency and insufficiency. So I was really the worst, in the worst category that most people have. So after I started supplementing with vitamin D and was taking basically cyproheptadine to lower my cortisol and progesterone, then I noticed that over the summer I grow about 80% of my hair. I have to take some pictures this summer and I'll show you. And then unfortunately, as basically the weather starts becoming bad as well, because I personally can't tolerate thyroid very well. I'm noticing that between October and let's say March, my hair basically starts to, I'm starting to get I'm starting to lose hair again. But the good news is it's not a doesn't seem to be a permanent thing. So it's definitely metabolic. To what degree you can reverse it and keep it at that level, it's mostly depends on you and your lifestyle, and how much time you can put into it without this turning into a orthorexic exercise. You don't want to focus too much on it, because then you're starting to generate some of the cortisol response yourself. So if cortisol, prolactin, and PTH/vitamin D are taken care of on a regular basis, I think most of the hair can be regrown back. There is nothing permanently damaged in the actual follicles. They're not dead. They're just living in a hypoxic environment, which what these stress mediators promote.
And I've often said, you telling me about your life, I feel like if I did all the things you had to do, I'd be dead. Like, you have a family to take care of, you have another job. Like, I feel like it's difficult just taking care of myself. And so I think I really admire you for that and feel like you deserve a medal. So I have on screen here, I should have really taken more time to craft the tweet, but it says, I'm quoting from the paper. It says men with early onset androgenic alopecia, so-called, have increased DHEAS levels and worse gonadal steroidogenesis. And I got real excited because it was actually just like a random Google Scholar search for seeing if somebody had quoted one of the high DHEA and pattern baldness papers, and then they found this, and it had just come out, and they say. Basically, they found elevated DHEA and low serum testosterone, and some
And
people
high
were like,
cortisol.
you pointed out the high cortisol, and so I think the prolactin and the high DHEA are linked, because like bromocriptine will actually drop the DHEA and PCOS,
Yes.
and I think
Yes.
just stress in males, and so I think again this like elucidates the real cause of the pattern baldness as accumulation of stress over a lifetime. And also the tightening of the vascular supply, I think, and
And
because
just to point out, it's key here that basically, even though DHA was high, this was with early onset.
yeah,
As the years progress, eventually you will see a decline of DHA as well, and then these people will basically be in a state of high cortisol, high prolactin, and there will be nothing to oppose these stress mediators. So I think at that point is when you're starting to see like a complete loss of hair. So it no longer looks like a androgenic pattern alopecia. It becomes like a complete alopecia.
yeah,
They have no hair.
yeah. And then I posted a bunch of things under here, but from Ray's prostate cancer article, it says increasingly in both sexes, it appears that DHEA may rise during stress as a result of a deficiency of thyroid, progesterone, and pregnenolone. The one thing I did want to ask you: have you seen any papers where it talks about, say, somebody had high DHEA? Does supplementing exogenous DHEA turn off the adrenals production or the skin's production?
Actually, I haven't seen that. I mean, I've seen that if you take too much DHA, it can suppress your gonadal production, because DHA turns very easily to estrogen. So if you take too much, estrogen does have a negative feedback, and that's how when that people supplement with testosterone, they get themselves shut down. They're like, oh my God, it's the testosterone doing it. No, it's actually testosterone converting into estrogen, and estrogen is known to suppress gonadal function by suppressing the pituitary as well. And that's actually why I think we discussed it in one of the podcasts, where sometimes postmenopausal women, when they get a little of an estrogen therapy, initially they feel relief. That's because the estrogen is suppressing the pituitary. But if this continues for too long, then you start getting the bad side effects of estrogen. Anyway, so I don't think the DHA can suppress the adrenals. I think what happens if you take a sufficiently high amount of progesterone or pregnenolone, you're probably going to get like a normalization of the adrenal. You're not going to suppress them to the point of, they stop producing cortisol. If you take very high dosage of androgens, such as testosterone, DHT, or any of the androgenic, not any, but most of the androgenic anabolic steroids, they do suppress the adrenals. So you can actually get into a sort of a dangerous quasi-Addison condition state, which is like a severe cortisol deficiency because you've suppressed your adrenals too much. The good news is that with DHEA, progesterone, and pregnenolone, you're not going to suppress your adrenals. If you take a sufficient amount of pregnenolone and progesterone, you're just going to normalize the functionality. You're going to turn off the excessive function.
I have on screen here an old article from 2009, and they say stress on, tresses gone. And it's basically how baldness is getting younger in like Indian kids, and they blame it on school, like the stress of, they say stress is one of the main factors responsible for acceleration of male pattern baldness, which is genetic, but would express itself in 40s. Now we get hordes of school and college going youngsters who have begun to go bald, says organizing chairman of the conference, Dr. Suresh Joshipura.
That's horrible. At school, in school, can you imagine this? These are like teenagers going bald.
Well, I remember being on like a hair loss forum and somebody posting, it must have been like monks, like young young men, not men, children monks, and their heads were all like forward on the photo, and you could see that a lot of them had like just receding hairlines and things, but they were really young. They were probably around 10, 13. And it was like clearly something is like not
so
right.
The articles that I've been posting on the young becoming the old, we're not seeing this only in the West. We're seeing it in basically all over the world. Stress is really pervasive.